Hi there. I'm Scott
Good.
Marker, and this is another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips. How this came to be is I'm a franchise owner of a once a month professional franchise. Referral groups, and it's based out of Houston, Texas. I was number 27. Now we have 130 plus. We're in soon to be 3 countries, and just people like me that love to get people together and help them grow our businesses. And through that, I just met lots and lots of high caliber local professionals, and I just thought I'm going to put this together so I could share it with the listeners, that expertise. And so today is a perfect example. Stan, introduce yourself.
Well, hi, Scott. I am Stan Audette. My wife, Shauna, and I have owned a local multi-inspector home inspection company in the Treasure Valley, Southwest Idaho area for 30 years now. And we've been having a lot of fun doing that.
Right, I love that. A lot of fun. So, um, like, 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 real quick. So, what got you into it? 30 years. I mean, what got you into it? Home inspections and commercial inspections.
It seemed like a natural for me because at age 14, my grandfather began uh, employing me to help him on remodels and even building houses.
Oh,
And then I went into college, studied engineering with the engineering sciences. I kind of understand how water flows, how soil compacts, how strengths of materials work in a house. And then I personally built and remodeled quite a few houses myself. I've done more than 450 renovation projects for other people.
wow.
But through most of my career, Scott, I've actually been an author, an editor, and a publisher in the technical fields. So that just kind of comes together as to would it be natural to see something, understand what it is, explain it to people, and then put that in writing. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I know it does. And that will segue into something else too. And you mentioned that before, and I never thought about that. But really, the inspection report is so important. And so being able to write concisely and well is important to, for I'm just so what do you think about that when it comes to reports?
I see you kind of focused on that, Scott. A lot of people don't realize that the English language, the use of it, and proficiency in the language is still very important
Right.
in the world. And many of us, I think, still kind of dislike our eighth grade English teachers because we thought that we weren't going to need that when we grow up. But anyway, I feel that's important. As home inspectors, we realize that what we say, first of all, verbally out loud, all the words we choose have a lot of emotional impact.
Right.
And they can have a lot of emotional impact even in our written reports.
Okay.
So we have to remember that. We try to keep our reports what we call charge neutral. Um,
Hmm.
that's kind of like the Goldilocks approach.
Right.
We consider ourselves to be wordsmiths. So our company, my wife and I actually are coaches across the nation in the home inspection industry. So we get a chance to see a lot of
Oh,
reporting
wow.
styles and answer a lot of questions.
No, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. So that segues perfectly into the next question is, so what makes, AAD Inspection Corp, your company, your and your wife's company, um, you know, kind of stand out or unique? I always don't like to say better. I always like to say different. So how do you guys try to be different for your customers?
No, absolutely, Scott. One of the mantras, the marketing mantras that we follow, and this is good for other businesses. We everything we do, from our business cards to our rack cards, our marketing brochures, website, everything we do is trying to answer the question. It was coined by somebody else, and I think I remember that it was Dan Kennedy years ago. He said, "What should uh, why should I, as your prospective customer or client, choose you as opposed to every other possibility out there available to me at this time, including choosing nobody at all?" And when you answer those questions, that that right there differentiates you in the market,
Right.
and that kind of leads into things that we call, now this is going to sound like a marketing lesson, but we do follow that. It's unique selling propositions, which answers that question. What do we Are there some things that we do that nobody else does? So, for instance, in our business, we do provide a 90-day limited buyer's warranty, and we run that ourselves. I don't think I know of any other company for home inspectors in the nation that does that. We're the ones that write the check. We're the ones that become the insurance company, but that puts us toe to toe and face to face with clients when they do have questions or problems, rather than sending them, to some,
Right.
I'm going to say, kind of a rather stiff-armed experience on a 1-800 number who
Right.
ends up being what do they call it, a claims adjuster for an insurance company. So it makes it more personal. It's part of our culture. As home inspectors, we realize that sometimes that inspection information causes a little renegotiation to happen. After you have a purchase agreement in place, then you invite the home inspector, and you might discover some more things you wanted to think about before you complete your sale. So when agents, for instance, write a change to a contract, an addendum to the contract based on home inspection information, we know everybody's going to get a little bit closer to the closing table and wonder, did the sellers really complete the things that we asked for? So we provide one
Okay.
free reinspection for that reason. So I think those things kind of differentiate us. Plus, we've learned to answer the phone 24/7.
Oh, wow.
And we actually have people that can schedule on that. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on because I've been doing this for 30 years.
No, no,
But,
no, no, no. I think you're doing a great job.
Scott, when I first got in this business, I knew nothing about marketing and nothing about businesses. They don't teach engineers that stuff. But I was smart enough to call all the other numbers in the valley to see kind of how they answer the phone. And what surprised me is that almost every one of them, no, actually every one of them without exception, it went to voicemail. So the first
Wow.
great aha was, gee, all I have to do is answer the phone.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that simple thing can differentiate you.
Yeah. And a lot of times it is the basics,
Yeah,
that make but the basics are important, especially on the largest, most people's largest purchases.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the way I feel about it. Because emotions are so high.
Yeah.
I've seen people give more thought, more trepidation over the financial decisions of buying a house than they would over major decisions on their health.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, perfect. That was great. Uh, well, so home inspections cost money, right? So
Yeah,
now I know this one, but this is what which I talked to you and about, what some common questions and stuff. So what, is it, am I going to get a return on my investment, or what is it worth paying for an inspector to buy a house? To inspect a house.
you know, that's a hard one in the conversation because it sounds real salesy when we say, "Oh, you can spend $400, $500, $600 on a home inspection, and you might get $5,000 worth of benefit back in your negotiations." We can't promise that, of course, but boy, do we see that a lot. Um, and one way we see
Oh,
that is some people are getting smarter and they're saying, why should I wait for a buyer to make an offer on the house and say, we're going to bring a home inspector if you have a house on the market?
right.
Instead, you have somebody give you a really thorough report and show everything that's going to come up.
Yeah.
And when you do that, as a seller, you've got an opportunity to decide to fix certain things. Now, the great thing about a seller fixing things is you can fix them and then it's going to be taken off the plate, off the negotiating table altogether. And here's where we find the real return on investment for sellers. When they decide to take something off the table themselves, they're doing it at their own expense, their own specifications, and they usually end up doing it for about 10% of what it would cost if the buyers asked for it. Because when the buyers ask to pay an inspector to discover things the seller could have told them, they're going to feel far more adamant about what's going to be done, who's going to do it,
Right.
what they expect. So
Right.
that's the first place. At least sellers can save a lot of money on home inspections. Just do it first. Figure out how you're going to
Yeah.
present the
I,
house.
I get that. Yeah. Cause I've heard this over the years, people saying that something is a deal breaker on a house,
Yeah,
because the seller, no, I'm not gonna fix that, I'm not gonna, and then the buyer goes, okay, fine, I'm not, no, that's, then it's a big battle a lot of times, or
absolutely, Scott. And
yeah,
sometimes the seller would be willing to fix it, but it's too late. The buyer's already walked or run away.
um,
Water in crawl spaces, mold in attics, things like that will turn the buyer off unnecessarily. And then you're still left with fixing it because the next buyer is going to want the same thing.
right. I love the saying, I don't know where I heard it, but I've heard it about home inspection company types, is that it's like a car,
Uh-huh.
there's always gonna be something wrong, but guess what? Most of the time it's fixable.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
you buy a used car, something's gonna be wrong with
Yeah.
it.
Well, another thing I hear a lot is buyers and sometimes listing agents will say, well, the buyers will probably pay for the home inspection. Why don't we just wait for them to do that instead of putting any money up front? I totally get that. But when you can fix something for 10% and take it off the table,
Yep.
it really helps. Oh, and the other thing that happens on those cases, I'd say maybe 15% of the time, if I were to guess, the buyers will end up discovering something that is a deal killer. Unfortunately, when that happens, they walk, the house goes off market, has to come back on market
Right.
after it's fixed. And then
Oh,
everybody's wondering, why was it off the market? What was wrong with it? So it immediately appears overshopped, and that's so unfortunate.
right, right. Those are good. So the moral of the story is, like, I'm thinking is that I and I've only had 2 homes in my life. I built one and bought the next one, and I just, it's a personal thing. Is that I just wouldn't buy a house with having an inspection company go through it, because it's like, again, it's my biggest investment in my life, and walking through a house, you can't determine what. I want to
Yes,
know if there's mold up in the attic or something like that. That I don't want to find out about that 2 years later after I bought
yes.
it. So.
And even having built a house, Scott, what we've discovered is builders and their families will come to home inspectors like us uh, to inspect their own homes, because we've developed that as a separate profession, separate skill. So when you think about it, builders know as much or more about houses than home inspectors do. So why would they go to home inspectors? Because they understand how important that information is.
Right. So that leads right into, so now you have a home builder and they build your brand new house,
Yeah,
and or you buy, it doesn't matter, or you just buy a new house, right?
yeah.
And why, why should you get in, why would you spend the money to bring an inspection company in if it's a brand new house?
Oh, that's a wonderful. Well, that's a perfect question. I have to confess that when I first started inspecting new houses, I felt a little guilty. I remember walking up the sidewalk towards the front door and kind of looking around to make sure nobody was watching this, because I was going to get money to be inspecting a new house. And what could be wrong with it?
Right,
It's a
right,
box of new crayons, right? They're all
right,
sharp pointed and shiny. And haven't all of the code inspectors had their way with the house already? What could possibly be wrong?
right,
But what I discovered really surprised me. What I discovered is that in brand new houses, as home inspectors, we often find more issues of consequence to buyers than we do of a house of any other age.
wow,
And it took me a while to find that. And I just want to admit that as a home inspector, I kind of felt the same as the most of the public would. But what it turns out is code inspectors, bless their hearts, are typically overworked, under budgeted, don't have enough time to see everything. They're just going to be focusing on the most troublesome
right,
contractors. And they don't go into crawl spaces, they don't go into attics, they don't have a chance to represent
right,
the buyer. And a lot of people don't realize that code inspectors have absolutely no direct responsibility to a particular buyer, only to the public at large. And you
right,
cannot sue City Hall. If you bring up something to them that they missed, it may embarrass them and they feel bad, but they just go on to the next.
right,
That's why people need to have their own representative there.
right. Yeah. The, I, I've heard recently in the last, because here in the Treasure Valley, the last several years, now the interest rates have gone up and stuff, but for several years, um, it was nonstop building, just and they're still building, but just crazy amounts of building and stuff. And I heard by more than one person, even a
Mm-hmm.
general contractor, that went to other homes that were halfway built and almost all the way built. And this person told me that he felt there was a lot of shortcuts being done. And sometimes, talking about labor and stuff like that, people are going 100 miles an hour and stuff like that. Anyway, it just, after what I've heard about just the fact that just people are building houses super fast, going up really fast, they're short on labor, there's a chance that something might have got missed. And again, in your largest purchase, that something might be a large, to be able to fix down the road, might be a large. Quick side note. So my dad bought an existing house, and then he wanted to add to his big, I don't know, shed or whatever. It's a big workshop out back. And then the, I guess, code inspectors came out and just said, "Oh, wait a minute, this was never built correctly," and made him do a whole bunch of extra stuff on it, that because the however many years before, 15 years before, it wasn't done correctly, right? Anyway, so he got stuck doing that type of stuff. So anyway, that makes me just think that I don't know, it'd be worth home inspections comparatively to your house. I would think are just not that much. So I would it make me feel, not everybody, but like you're saying, you just kind of justify or back up my thinking. What I've heard is that why not have someone come in there and take a look at, your
Yeah.
house and make sure that everything's what it is.
Scott, your thinking is spot on. In fact, you'll hear that parroted by probably almost every licensed real estate sales agent, and especially their brokers. They already know that. I mean, to the point where the brokers will give forms to the real estate agents and talking points, and the real estate agents will try to convince buyers to get a home inspection, whether they want to or not. They'll try to, and if the buyers decide they don't want to, their brokers actually want them to sign a form and say, well, we suggested that you do, and if you didn't, don't come back crying to us, because sometimes people, when they have remorse later, will forget what was told them.
Right.
And you almost need it in writing nowadays. Now, the reason, I think one of the main reasons we're going to have problems in new construction sometimes is because it is hard to find good labor. The recession we had back in 2007 through 12 or so chased a lot of the good, experienced tradesmen out of the business, and they became other things, and they didn't come back in. So then when the house market came back up and we needed more tradesmen, we didn't have as many really experienced ones out there. So that's one problem. And then, as we said, code inspectors don't find everything. Right. Builders will try to use the argument, it's a brand new house, it passed code. I mean, because it's a brand new house and because they got an occupancy permit, that means it meets code. No, that just means that the code inspector didn't say anything about things he didn't see.
Yeah.
And by the way, home inspectors are not code inspectors, but the funny thing is we end up probably learning more about code than most of the code inspectors because we've become almost historians.
One other quick personal note, my first house, I called, and it was all the way done in theory. And I called my builder up and said, it's not done. Oh, yes, it is. Code's all done. I said, well, then what's this big box that says air conditioning on it in my garage? It wasn't installed yet. So anyway. And
the builder was probably arguing that it was all done because he already had an occupancy permit. And that shows you how tight the home inspection or the code inspections are sometimes.
Yeah. Well, perfect. So here's one that kind of comes from you and what kind of things in the past is, so how can a buyer or their agents find and choose the best home inspector for their transactions?
Okay. All home inspectors are different. They have different backgrounds. They have different pet things that they look for, different amounts of experience. And here's a surprising fact. If I were to ask a group of people, if you had 10 appraisers approach the same property, how many different appraisal values would you get? They immediately say 10. And if I said, if you had the same group of 10 appraisers make a list of shortcomings in property conditions, how many different lists would you get? They all immediately say 10.
Wow.
But then I change it up a little. I say, if you had 10 home inspectors approach the same property, how many different inspection reports would you get? They have to scratch their chin and think about that for a little while, because our industry and our citizenry just hasn't figured that one out yet. And I just almost want to say, well, with respect to your appraisers, y'all already got over it, didn't you? Can you understand that home inspectors are also different? And for that reason, to finish answering your question about how would you choose a home inspector, realizing they're all different backgrounds, choose one that kind of fits your personality, choose one that fits the report style you'd like to see. So here's what I'd admonish people to do when they're in the market for home inspection, whether it's a pre-listing home inspection or whether for a purchase if you're a buyer. Ask your realtor, if you're lucky enough to have one, to recommend some home inspectors who have served their clients well in the past. And then go to their websites of those home inspectors and look at those websites. But more importantly, insist on seeing an example home inspection report, because if you got those two pieces of information and then you see the price, the buyers will be smart enough to choose a good fit for them. And I have to admit, after 30 years of home inspections, our company, our culture, our inspectors are not always the best fit for every client. So make sure you get the best fit.
Right. Yeah. I love that. And then here's a side note that a lot of people don't know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but here in Idaho, there's good news, bad news. We're one of the least regulated states in the country.
And we like it that way.
We like it that way. But that's where, as a consumer, you have to be more careful, because I've been told that I personally could go to the state and pay my
Registration.
registration. I don't know how much they are now, $1,500, right? And I could be a home inspector tomorrow
Yes,
and hand cards out. Is that true here in Idaho?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Which
Uh,
when I heard that, I said, and I heard that a couple of years ago. When I heard that, I went, holy smokes. Again, I mean, there's what you, when you do your homework is really what you just said was check their website out, check some maybe realtors, and then check their inspection reports, because if there's no set standards requirements, what I mean, you got to do your homework. So anyway, I interrupt you. Keep going on that.
well, no, you're right on. Our inside joke is a lot of home inspectors are home inspectors because they found a flashlight and they have a ladder. But and that's even a lower bar than for contractors. You have to have a ladder and a hammer and a dog and a pickup. So we don't even have to have as many qualifications as a
Love
builder.
that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Hey, well, this has been good today. I love this. I said, I love people bringing on, like, sharing with you. And like I said, you're a perfect example of companies here. Like you said, maybe you're not fit for everybody, but I think you're a fit for a lot of people. And so for the listeners, what would be the best way for them to reach? I'm going to have it in the show notes too, but what would be the best way for them to reach out to your company for some help?
Well, we finally got a website that's kind of like the way people would like to find us, and that's just wecheckhomes.com.
Oh, cool. Oh, awesome. That's perfect. Hey, well, thanks again. This has been another episode of Treasure Valley NIA Quick Tips. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to Stan and his team, because they're really good. Really, really good. I've heard lots of things about them. Great feedback. So anyway, thanks again. Have a good one.